In 1935, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law. It helped stabilize American society and gave workers and the elderly a sense of security for the future. As we covered in our last episode, the Public Works Administration created massive infrastructure projects that put millions of people back to work. Together, these programs became some of the key reasons why Roosevelt won a landslide re-election in 1936. The big city press tried to smear him, but America's middle class and working class who directly benefited from the New Deal weren't buying it. And ironically, many of the journalists and small-time editors themselves were supporters of Roosevelt. Another factor, the New Deal was, in many ways, a money machine. Federal relief wasn't just about need, it often flowed to regions that stood behind FDR. Everybody understood the game, and it worked. It won votes. While Roosevelt was winning at home, the world abroad was growing darker. In March 1936, Adolf Hitler boldly sent German troops into the demilitarized Rhineland. Britain and France issued protests but took no action. Hitler saw them for what they were: paper tigers. In May, Mussolini declared Italy had conquered Ethiopia, the League of Nations having already failed to stop Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 once again looked the other way. By November, Francisco Franco, backed by Hitler and Mussolini, pushed his forces into Madrid in the Spanish Civil War. The world seemed to be drifting toward crisis after crisis, but the trauma of 1914, the reckless plunge into the First World War, still haunted people. Fear of another catastrophic conflict kept nations from acting. Across the Atlantic, Americans felt the same way. They wanted nothing to do with foreign wars. In 1935, Congress passed the Neutrality Act, banning the sale of arms to any belligerents. It was a clear expression of American isolationism. The law was enforced immediately when Italy invaded Ethiopia, and it stayed in place until the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. At home, the economy was rebounding. Industrial production, which had peaked at an index of 125 in 1929, climbed back to 121 by late 1936. Through mid-1937, it hovered around 117, but then came what historians now call the Roosevelt recession. Why? Because Roosevelt tried to balance the budget. He cut public works spending. Within months, 2 million people lost their jobs. Memories of the Great Depression were still raw, and panic spread quickly. Now, it's true that every class suffered in the Depression, but not equally. For America's biggest corporations and banks, hard times were also opportunities. As small businesses collapsed, the giants bought them up, consolidated, and grew stronger. Profits from mergers and monopolies created what we'd now call supercorporations. By 1935, America had about 500,000 companies earning $6 billion in profit. But if you removed just the top 960 firms, the rest were losing money. And within that elite group, nearly 2/3 of the profits were made by just 42 companies, almost a quarter by the top 6 alone: General Motors, AT&T, Standard Oil of New Jersey, U.S. Steel, DuPont, and General Electric. These giants dominated their industries so thoroughly that smaller firms were afraid to invest. Safer to park money in corporate bonds or in banks than to risk starting something new. By April 1938, unemployment and fear forced Roosevelt's hand. He pumped $3 billion back into relief and public works, and like an addict revived by a dose, the economy sprang back to life. By June, recovery was underway again. But Roosevelt's New Deal had proven something else. After 5.5 years, it still couldn't return America to the prosperity of 1929. If 1929 had marked capitalism's triumph, by 1938 fascism looked like it was on the march. That year, Hitler annexed Austria in March, and by October he carved up Czechoslovakia, Munich. By March 1939, he swallowed the rest of the country. The same spring, Franco won the Spanish Civil War, and Mussolini invaded Albania. As these headlines crossed the Atlantic, Americans were shocked. Fear spread, but so did hesitation. World War I still loomed large. Many believed that if anyone was going to confront fascism, it had to be Britain and France. Then came August 23, 1939. Newspapers around the world carried stunning news. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union had signed a non-aggression pact. That meant Hitler was free to act in the East without fear of Stalin. On September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. The sword of Damocles finally fell. Americans held their breath, waiting. Would Britain and France respond? For 2 days, silence. Then, on the morning of September 3rd, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's voice crackled over radios across the world. Unless we heard by 11 o'clock that Germany was prepared to withdraw from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now, no undertaking has been received, and consequently, this country is at war with Germany. That voice, carried over the Atlantic, made one thing clear: the age of war was back. The Great Depression of the 1930s was over. The 1940s and a new global conflict had begun. Thanks for watching this episode. If you'd like us to keep going into the 1940s, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that follow button. We'll see you next time.